Hi, I'm Darlene Carman, and welcome to the show. Wendy became interested in mythology, science fiction, and fantasy at a young age. She even joined the New England Science Fiction Association. In college, she volunteered as a librarian. On her first day, she met Lance, who borrowed a science fiction book. Wendy and Lance Glasser have been living a life of fantasy, science, and science fiction ever since. Ah, that's such a romantic story. But it doesn't end there. So a few chapters down the way, you both landed up in Las Vegas in 2004, and you went to see a display in a gallery of dragons. But you didn't really both agree on what you liked in dragons.
So we wandered into this gallery after dinner, and they had, among other things, a display of these magnificent dragons with all different patinas and all different poses. And Lance and I have succeeded in agreeing on 2 pieces of art in 45 years, and those dragons were not one of them. And after a while of going back, no, I like this one, I like that one.
And we wanted the dragons, but not the same one.
All right, and I looked at the price tag and I said, I'm not paying that kind of money for something that they're going to have that many in addition of each one of these dragons.
What were the features that, you know,
the patina was that they were bright, they were iridescent. The dragons were sitting up and looking at you, or they were lying down and looking at you. And we couldn't agree on a color, we couldn't agree on a pose.
Any of those things.
Any of those things. So finally I said, we're not buying one. We're not going to compromise on this and go home with something that neither one likes. And we left the gallery. And as we left,
I opened my big mouth and say, I can do that.
and I said, thinking, oh my God, he'll drive me nuts when he retires, go ahead.
Well, wait a minute. Not everybody can just like walk into a gallery, see something you like, and then go home and master it. So what am I missing here?
Well,
You read a book.
So, you know, a short time later, she's surprised that pieces of aluminum start arriving and galvanized pipe, and I'm cutting up tires to wrap a armature together so that it, you know, will hold together, and we start building this armature of this.
Well, now wait a minute though. You're missing something here. So you read a book. I mean,
Literally, he read a book.
well, you're an artist. I mean, you draw. You always draw. You don't just read a book and say, okay, here's the sculpture, I'm going to start doing it. I mean, you have always had an experience with drawing.
That's correct. I was bored in school a lot, so I did a lot of doodling.
And your background, your father was a sculptor a little bit?
Well,
you might have learned something, maybe?
My father did art on the side, sculpture on the side, but he was basically an engineer, and I'm an engineer, and our 3 kids are engineers. So the 3D part just is wired that way.
Yes, yes. So you just felt it inside, and you just knew you could create it.
Well,
this is your first thing.
And I've been drawing. It is, but I've been drawing dragons and dames for like ever, right? Since high school, maybe, right?
But you didn't start out with anything small. You know, you start, this is your first piece.
Yes, so this is my first ever sculpture.
Yeah, and it's firstborn. And he had it in mind. Now, he talked about having that armature. What he doesn't talk about is his studio was my dining room. This piece is on my dining room table, and I'm holding meetings at my house for an organization. The exec board is coming over, and I have the food out around the armature for them to get snacks, and they walk in and say, oh, what a fantastic sculpture, and it's just the aluminum stuff, and I'm looking at them saying, you don't understand.
And so then we added the clay to it, and you know, started building it up, and
this is really, truly a magnificent piece. I have seen it before, but I don't remember it being so large. How much does this weigh about?
About 50 pounds.
Oof.
Which is about the limit of what I can lift.
And it's hollow inside.
Yeah,
yes.
it would weigh over 300 or 400 pounds if it was solid.
Wow, wow.
So.
Well, that is just, the expression and everything that you have on this piece, the proportion. I don't know what patina it's certainly not iridescent. It's very natural.
It's a very natural patina. It's a bronze dragon. So the book he was taking out of the library was by Anne McCaffrey, and it was not one of her dragon books, but she has a series of dragon books, and her dragons, the males are bronze. So,
well, we have a couple pictures. The first one we have is the armature. So that's the wire sculpture thing.
Yeah,
so this is kind of like the beginning process.
Right, that's that aluminum thing that she was entertaining around.
So maybe we can, there it is.
There it is.
So we've got the armature, and that's several different kinds of wire.
Yeah, it's aluminum, galvanized pipe, tube from old bicycle tires, and basically anything that would hold it together, because it has to be strong to hold the weight of the clay that comes
And
next.
so the next one is the clay.
Yep.
And there it is. Is that full size like this?
It's exactly the same.
Exactly. Because this is before you take it to the foundry.
That's right.
So you have the clay, which is pliable, I understand. I don't think we have any here. And so then you take it to the foundry. And I remember you telling me before that you have to have it cut into different pieces.
Yeah, so we didn't know this because this is our first piece. We bring it to the foundry, say, can you do this? And they said, yeah. And I think Wendy asked, well, can we have it back when you're done? And he said, well, we're going to cut it into 9 pieces. And we go,
oops, watch your mic.
sorry about that.
So
But,
9 pieces.
Yeah, so.
and I said to him, are you nuts? You're going to let them cut this up? And they did. And
They cut it
came
up,
back.
and then they did the pieces separately. And then who puts it back together?
Yeah, they welded back together.
Oh, that's
themselves.
nice of them to do that. I appreciate that very much. And then you get it home, and you have to put the patina on
No,
it?
they
do.
patina it.
Oh, they do that too. So you tell them.
So that's a artisan with a torch in one hand and chemicals known to the state of California to cause cancer in the other, spraying it and patinaing it. It's quite an involved process, and I oversee it, but it's done by somebody else.
And so,
They're
and
quite
this is what
talented.
you envisioned, right?
It is what we envisioned, and it has the smooth movements, and you can see the curl of the tail, and it's that dynamics, that rhythm, the gesture is what I try to achieve in my pieces. And when people look at it and feel an emotion from it, that's when it works, right? At least in my opinion.
He's very awesome. I love this piece. This was created in like 2005, I would say. So now your very latest piece that you've just finished, we're going to unveil here. And this is Dragon Games.
Yes.
Beautiful. Wow. So I see that we have a dragon up there. So describe the action. What's going on here?
So this started many years ago when I was walking down the street someplace and saw a poster of a model throwing her hip out in this really interesting pose. And like an idiot, I didn't take a picture of it. I should have. But it's stuck in my head. And it's carrying it around. And recently, we hired a model. The model was very good, and she had an attitude that was fantastic, and said, she can do this pose. And so we got her to do the pose and sculpted it. And Wendy will tell you I can't leave anything alone without adding my
Yes.
something. So I don't know where the dragon came from, but one night it flew in, and there were actually 2 dragons, but that didn't look very good, so one of them went away. And, so she's holding a dragon, and the model comes back, and it's just like, oh, this is fantastic. Of course, like most sculptors, we work from nudes to get all the muscles and so forth.
Well, now, wait a minute. Now, Wendy, you kind of contributed to this piece and the development. What happened here?
So he had her just about finished, or he thought he did, and I came
Artists
in,
never know.
And I came in and I looked at it and I said, no one is ever going to believe that some woman is out there falconing with a dragon out in the woods, going through the brambles, stark naked. You got to put clothes on her. And I left.
And so I put clothes on her.
And I came back in, and he proudly showed me that he'd put clothes on her. And I looked at him and I said, functional? Not so much. And that was the working name of the piece.
Yeah, that was the working title till it was done.
Well, no armor or anything, but
Yeah, functional, not so much. I really thought he should call her that, but he liked dragon games, and that's where we ended up.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book now about Leonardo da Vinci, and they talk about that he studied physiognomy, and he had notebooks of noses and mouths and things like that, so he could get the drama that he wanted to convey his action. So what is your technique to get this drama and the...
Well, first of all, I mean, he was, of course, exactly right. There are actually, they know today that there are muscles in the face that are only there to convey information to other people. I mean, they're not moving your mouth or your eyes or anything else. They're just to convey expression. And so getting those expressions, the body language is such an important part of human communication. And since bronze doesn't talk very well, it's an even more important part of that. The thing that I have that Leonardo da Vinci didn't have is Google Images.
And to be honest, to get the faces, he did a piece, it was his second piece, that it's a fantastic piece except for the woman's face. And he looked at it and said, and he went off and took a course with a forensics anthropologist, where what they did was they started with a lump of clay and they created a face of a baby. And then over the course of the week, they aged that face until, if it was a female baby, it was a woman, old woman. If they'd done a boy, it was an old man. And so they had to go through all the stages of how the skin worked and how the muscles worked. And you know, after that, his faces were phenomenal.
Wow. Well, because it is so important to convey action. And I think maybe that's why Leonardo was so famous, because, you know, just looking at his piece, and every single person in the piece, you know, have an expression, and they're part of telling the story.
That's right.
And
we had I did a piece recently that was David, as in David and Goliath. And as David it's him as he releases the stone, right? Because don't compete with Michelangelo, right? That's a good rule. And so what I went is I found all these images of baseball players just at the release, because people like to take those photographs.
Yes.
And you could find the micro expression on the face just at that moment. And I studied to get that into the sculpture.
Wow.
And that's the sort of stuff we do.
Very cool. Well, you guys take this very serious now. So you play the part, you go to the science fiction conventions. So what happened? You went last year. How was that in San Jose?
We went to the World Science Fiction Convention in San Jose last year. It was our 45th anniversary, and it actually fell on our anniversary. And for our honeymoon, we went to the World Science Fiction Convention 45 years before.
In Toronto.
In Toronto.
They're romantic.
So it was, you know, we have to do this. It's here, we have to do it. The convention was very good. They do a costume show on the Saturday night. It's called the Masquerade. And there is an entire genre of people in science fiction that are professional costumers. That's what they love to do. And they do hall costumes, and then they put on phenomenal costumes for this Saturday night masquerade, and they're judged by other professional costumers. And since I was 17 and I went to my first Worldcon in Boston, I had my mother make me a costume back then. I read comic books as well, so I went as Dorma from the Submariner comics, and I had on this red...
This last time?
No, this is the first one,
okay,
and I've been costuming ever since.
Okay.
But I can't sew, so I find things. So you'll have a picture later on, and I'll talk about that.
Let's look at it now. We have a picture of you in costume. So Wendy, what are you wearing in this one?
So I found that dragon necklace. Oh my God.
Dragons again.
Dragons again. I'm in love with dragons.
I was born in the year of the dragon.
And he was a year of the dragon. I'm the year of the snake, so I'm not as good as he is.
It's a beautiful piece.
Thank you. I found that at a Renaissance Fest in Virginia years and years ago, and I've made that part of my costuming. This is actually almost a buccaneer's jacket with the wide lapels, and it has big cuffs on the sleeves, and I added that to my costuming. And when I find things that I think are really interesting would make a good costume, I put them together and wear them at the cons, because I can't sew.
Very cool. And let's see, this next picture, now this is you, Lance.
Yes. So this, no, it was a couple years ago now, we went to Italy to Carnival at Viareggio, and they had all these marchers and floats and so forth. It was a great fun. And one of the groups had these little skulls on their lapels, and so I said, "Oh, I love that."
Yes.
And so eBay later, and here we find some skulls to go with the rest of the crazy costume.
That's awesome. That looks great. Well, our next piece to look at is this piece right here, Enlightenment.
Yes, Enlightenment.
So what was your inspiration for this piece?
So that started life in the early 70s as a book plate drawn with pen and ink, India ink from back then. And it was, from the library of Ex Libris. And it was perfectly content to stay a book plate for many decades. And then after I started doing sculpture, it decided it needed to be in 3D. And so here it is in 3D. Of course, it had to have some twist to it. So it actually will hold a candlestick, and that's why its name is Enlightenment, because the candle will illuminate the book that that creature is wearing. And you notice, the thing I like about this piece is all the textures and different.
Yes, definitely. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you ever use a model more than one time?
I didn't use a model for this piece.
Not this one, but in general, do you use a model more than once?
Yes, we do, but most of the time it's for a single event.
Single piece.
You
may have a model in multiple times to work on the same
Oh
piece.
yeah, it takes many hours with the model to really go through all that. And I mean, the only time I've had a problem is I had one model who told me she was going to heaven. And I said, "Oh, how do you know you're going to heaven?" That's congratulations. She said, "Well, for all the pain you have put me through in this life for this pose."
Whoa.
And that was the last time we saw her. Because some of the poses we put the models through are difficult to hold and so forth.
Well, this last piece that we have to look at, this might be a pose that could have been difficult. So we'll unveil this one here.
Yeah, so that you can imagine that pose was non-trivial to hold. And this model was fantastic. She was a yoga instructor.
A yoga instructor. Oh,
in order to be able to do that.
And what about him?
I don't want to give your viewers nightmares, but that I did with a mirror.
I should have noticed the muscles and a few little oddities that we have there. It's really awesome.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So imagine trying to be the model to hold this pose.
Yes.
What you find is you can't do it, right? So we built a contraption. Remember, I'm an engineer, with slings and all sorts of things for her to hold on to hold at least something close to the pose. Right?
Okay.
And one of the
so where, for her back, leaning back, or for what
well,
part?
yes. So she.
Oh, it's hard to me.
Yes. Well, it was complicated, but let me just mention one thing. Her leg was in a sling. Okay, so that she could hold it up.
Yes.
Okay, and so the leg is resting in this sling.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, okay, it's pretty well done. I'm happy with it. And I said, okay, you've been modeling 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes on, 5-minute break, 20 minutes on. So time for break. And when I say that, she lifts her leg out of the sling and this muscle right here pops up. I said, stop! Stop! You got to stop. I got to get that.
Yeah.
And you know, not everybody knows human anatomy to the level of a orthopedist or a sculptor, but when you look at a piece, you know maybe something doesn't feel right, it doesn't look right. But if you hit something like that, it just looks better. And you wouldn't have known what was wrong if I didn't do that, but it wouldn't have been as good.
That definitely does it. Of course, not too many people look like this, in any pose. But this is getting a lot of attention. Actually, we have a ribbon here. So we got a ribbon that belongs with that. That's one.
Yeah, that was from a science fiction convention.
A science
That's
fiction
another
convention.
World Con in Reno. That
Very
he had
nice.
just done that piece and
Best in
took it
Show.
with us and got Best in Show.
Congratulations. Well, rightly so. I mean, that is just awesome.
And this comes out of my interest in mythology, that he came up with this idea of the satyr and the Maenad dancing together on a bacchanalian evening.
Right, and they're jitterbugging, which
Of
is a
course.
dance we both love.
Yeah, of course.
So that's where the jitterbug came from on this.
Except my jitterbug didn't quite look like that. Do it on the dance floor. I mean, it's like,
Neither does mine.
yeah, I mean, you guys must be wild on the dance floor. But carefree, definitely carefree. So what else is happening with this piece? What
Well,
other attention is it getting?
It was just accepted to show in New York City for the National Sculpture Society. They have a California exhibit, and it's one of the pieces selected for that.
Oh, wonderful. And when will that be on display?
From August 19th through October 18th, I believe, in Manhattan. National Sculpture
will you
Society.
get to go?
We're still debating that.
So
I'm
the-
saying yes, he's saying no.
I'm saying yes. I'm definitely saying yes. That's a good idea to go to that. Why not? And you never know who you'll meet.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what conversations there'll be. We showed this at a show in Colorado, and a group of women gathered around it, and we're talking among each other, how is this young lady going to feel about this in the morning? And one said, oh, best ever. Another one said, oh, what have I done? And so I'm just listening to this.
Yes, yes. Well, there's so much you can do with this. I'm sure that you have your own notebooks, and I don't mean noses and mouths that I was referring to with Da Vinci, but I mean you probably have your own record of the pieces, and the feedback is so important for artists to hear feedback. And so many times they don't really hear that. I mean, I've been at shows where I see people whispering, and you just, you're sitting over there, they're looking at your piece, and you would love to know what they're saying, but they don't talk to you. They just, so it would be nice if you were up close and you could hear some of these things.
Yep.
And also, you just never know who you're going to meet. One show would lead to another.
Yeah.
What if you get into a nice museum? Part of a collection piece or something. I'm saying you gotta go.
This piece actually is collected by a number of people, and
Yes.
they buy it for their wine cellar.
So how many limited edition?
It's an edition of 15, and we've sold 3 or 4 so far.
Oh, wow. Well, that's just a beautiful piece. Well, you go to New York, it's going to sell even more.
Well, I think one of the pieces is in New York, the first one that we sold.
Oh, that's great. Well, now, what are you working on right now?
So my next piece is actually a climber, a lady climbing up a cliff.
Climbing up a cliff.
The reason I did it is because it's kind of by popular demand. My most popular piece is actually one that's even more popular than this so far, is a climber. It's a male climber, and we have it in 2 sizes, a 24-inch and a 12-inch. And the 12-inch
Did you want
piece
to
there.
that one?
And
This is the male.
yeah, so that's the male version. And for the 24-inch version, that edition is almost completely sold out. So I've been being pushed to do a female version.
I was going to say, so they asked you to do a female version. I mean, it's only right. Well, are you going to like display them together or put them, that's not the intention to do that, right?
Well, I think I'll be out of the male ones, but are almost out. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping some of the people who bought the female, bought the male, will get a companion female.
You showed the back and the back.
I'm showing the back now.
Yeah,
Yes.
those good
This
muscles.
is the way it's usually seen, because the inspiration for the climber was he was in a gallery and he heard someone say, "Sculpture is what you walk around while you're looking
Yeah,
at
what you
art
bump into
that's
when you're
hanging
looking."
in the wall, on the wall." And he decided he was going to make a sculpture
They could hang on the
that
wall.
could hang on the wall, and our son was a rock climber. So I have a garden that has a support beam across the top of the tomato plants to tie them up to. So my son was hanging off of that in this pose while he took a whole bunch of pictures so that he could get the musculature.
Oh.
And it does, some people do have it hanging on something so that you can see walk around and see the front and the back. But generally, it's hanging and you see the back.
Yeah, people acquire it and put it on their rock fireplace.
Oh. Well,
In fact, that's
a
how
good
the
place for
12-inch
it.
became into existence, was someone called them and said, "I love your climber, but it doesn't fit on my fireplace.
Could you
Can
make it
a
smaller?"
12-inch edition?"
Oh, so what do you think, why do you think that's the most popular? Any
People
thought?
identify with it, and it
People
has a
identify with it.
rhythm to it. So as I spoke at the beginning that what I'm after is the gesture and the rhythm. This line here,
Yeah,
right? You can see that S curve. That's beautiful.
it is.
Right. This line across here, that works. So those lines are on purpose. They're not by accident. And in this piece, it works really, really well. And now if you go back and look at Bacchanalian swing, you'll begin to see some S curves and some rhythm
Yeah,
in
I
it.
see. Oh, it's heavy, but it's so good.
If you think that's heavy, try the 24-inch version.
This is a beautiful piece, and I would just like to invite all of you out there watching, and I'm sure that we all agree, to put a little fantasy in your life. Thanks for watching the show, and watch again. Bye. That's a beautiful piece. You see his face.